Hello, my name is Laura Sigmund. I'm the principal here at Best Practices Consulting Services, and today we're going to review improving distressed assets. I like to begin by telling you a little bit about our agenda. We're going to review a few different things, not so much in this order, but we're going to talk about what economic gardening is, both from an academic standpoint and from a utilization standpoint at the local level. We're going to talk about how to actually use tenets of economic gardening to improve a distressed asset. We're also going to identify how partners and who those partners are and how we need them to facilitate an effective economic gardening program, um, particularly those who are stakeholders. We'll review case studies, and then we'll talk about how to actually implement a distressed asset program. I want to start off by defining economic gardening. It has morphed over the last decade or so, maybe the last 20 years, into something a little bit different. But for the purpose of this discussion today, economic gardening is an economic development model that embraces the fundamental idea that entrepreneurs drive economies. The model seeks to create both jobs and helping to support more opportunity for existing distressed assets. The concept was actually pioneered in 1987 in Littleton, Colorado, when the state itself was in recession. And it was not always the same in every community around the United States, but they felt a localized recession and they wanted an alternate to traditional economic development practices, which had prior to that been seeking large organizations to come. I mean, we're talking Fortune 500 companies or just under Fortune 500 companies to come and to rebuild their economies. So it initially was based on research by the MIT's David Birch, who suggested that most new jobs in any local economy are really produced at a local level, the smallest community, the local small business. And with that new thinking, economic gardening decided that it could, or the founders of this infrastructure decided that economic gardening could really just connect existing entrepreneurs to relevant resources to foster and to encourage an opportunity to support and stabilize those existing businesses. So, the Littleton Economic Gardening Initiative provides local entrepreneurs with access to competitive intelligence on markets, on customers, and competitors that is comparable to the resources customarily available only to larger firms who are paying very large marketing index, or they have the reference USA content. But now that economic gardening is looking at localized economies, we now see that we can also bridge some of the gap that we have in our own local Detroit, Michigan, or Michigan, Ohio, Indiana, all of the markets. You can take tenets of it, small pieces of it, and use it as you see fit in your own local economy. So that's economic gardening in general. I think it is extremely important for us to think about how to identify the right partners to facilitate an economic gardening program. We need to look first and foremost at who the stakeholders really are. So that starts off with property owners who have truly occupiable facilities that may be underutilized. Those facilities have the capacity to become destinations again. We need entrepreneurship training programs that have helped budding entrepreneurs or ideators move through a training program and they need a proof of concept spot. So, this allows economic gardening for distressed assets when we marry the two. If we can find startup entrepreneurs who come from various backgrounds and industries who are really execution ready, they are also a significant stakeholder in this communication. We definitely want to find commercial tenants, people who are leaseholders who probably have realized after they've gone through the trouble of writing a business plan, securing the funding, raising the capital, launching the business, and now they're recognizing that operations are not quite as stellar as they thought they'd be, right? So in that situation, they're looking for ways to offset some of their expenses, and subsidizing their rent may actually work. We'll look at a few of those in our case studies in just a second. We're looking for property owners who could use relief from their um, operations. We're not saying that you were distressed or even underutilized. We're simply saying you're probably the person who's ready to pull back a little bit. You've been at it for 20, 30 years. You're now in a position where you're ready to take a breath, enjoy a little bit more free time. maybe even consider training your successor if that's the case. So economic gardening, or some of the tenets of economic gardening, could even support an operator like yourself. And then municipalities or local governments who have an abundance of occupiable commercial properties, but they don't have the resources internal to actually execute a robust economic development strategy to resecure those people who, or agencies that might be interested in occupying those properties. This is a great spot for you to take some of the tenets from the collaborative ecosystem and see how that may support you in your space. All right. Get this. We're going to take a look at a few case studies. This may have been 2017 or so. This is an organization, Red Bag Boutique, operated on the Lower East Side of Detroit. Red Bag Boutique is at 14440 East Jefferson, a retail store selling women's apparel and accessories. And the owners were three sisters, each of them with gainful employment, which really sort of put a limit on what they could do around marketing and sourcing and staging and all the rest of it. You have to coordinate three different schedules. You have to coordinate who's going to do what, when, where, who's going to control the money. Those are just traditional things that anybody has to deal with, especially when there's a partnership, a family partnership. That's a lot. It's just a lot, especially as a startup. But once they've gotten through the actual scheduling and the continuity of practice of who do what, it became a matter of, now we need to test the till, or look at the cash register, or look at our sales strategy and identify why there is a deficit, or why we're not getting ample foot traffic. Our apparel is really, cutting edge. People like what we offer, but we're not seeing dense traffic patterns moving into our particular storefront. Well, here's the situation. Red Bag Boutique, I consider them, when we are reinvigorating a distressed community, not just an asset, but a distressed community. This portion of Jefferson was going through a revitalization phase, and they were what I consider pioneers or first movers in helping to execute that. And this level of enterprise or engagement did not exist. So some of it was community not aware that Red Bag Boutique was physically there. Some of it was location. Location. We're always looking for very high foot traffic patterns, destination patterns. You want to be stuck to an anchor where it will drive traffic. And that wasn't the case. There was a lot of small boutique spaces, really micro and mini businesses that were operating in the space, but not a whole lot to drive a lot of traffic. And they were looking to grow, to build more opportunity. So though they were not a true dilapidated business, they were a distressed asset, because their retail sales indicated that they weren't making what they anticipated, at least what I'm sure their business plan sort of indicated they could actually make. So here was a solution. We decided to do a little canvassing, assess what was directly in the area. And if you were to go a mile or two out, straight up Jefferson in either direction, well, in one direction, you end up bumping the border of Grosse Pointe. And then the opposite direction, you start to look at a little more density, where grocery stores and auto repair shops and some other things that were, anchored in the community and well known as destinations. How do you pull that traffic to where you are? You can do that through affinity marketing. One method is to incorporate something like an affinity marketing campaign. You find that hardware store, auto repair store, or a grocery store, a nail salon that's got, a lot of traffic, consistent traffic, a hair salon that's got a consistent traffic, and you offer every time they purchase there, they can get something off at Red Bag Boutique, right? That push pull strategy, that affinity marketing. But there was also an opportunity for us to look at a vertical connection. So if Red Bag Boutique is known for selling very eclectic, fashionable wear for a certain population of women, it wasn't everyday casual wear. it was really statement piece, right? They were statement pieces, and they had accessories to accommodate that. So we then needed to step back and identify what would be a vertical connection that would help to stimulate, draw, and drive traffic directly into this area. So, makeup artists, custom jewelry designers, anyone like that, right? Who could do or provide a special service or product would be considered part of that vertical connection. So we had to assess what day of the week should we offer or identify opportunity for a makeup artist to, set up shop directly inside of Red Bag Boutique. That was one of the things that had to happen. Secondarily, we needed to be selective on who would be in that actual ecosystem. How do we assess? How do we identify the right fit, right? So we needed to look for makeup artists, and that was really simple because makeup artists like to show their wear. They like to show their work. You can find them on Instagram and Facebook and probably Snapchat. Listen, I'm not the social media guru, but you could find them on social media platforms, and they are probably definitely going to have robust followings if their work really is good, right? So that was one of the methods of identifying who would be a really good fit. So we could work them into our store, and then by identifying who that makeup artist is or that custom jewelry designer might be, we could then interview them with the intention to give them maybe a Monday or a Tuesday, which we consider our lower traffic days. Give them a place to practice their spot. You then negotiate what the rate will look like. You could also incorporate joint marketing. Every time they market or post, they have to say hosted by the Red Bag Boutique. Shop today, get $5 off at the Red Bag Boutique. Things like that. That would automatically integrate Red Bag Boutique into whoever this makeup artist, this particular practitioner may be, or this custom jewelry designer may be, or the sunglass lady might be. They're people, for some reason, in the city of Detroit, we've got a lot of people who have their own signature line of sunglasses, but they don't have a physical destination where people can procure that product. And, as a sunglass wearer, I want to sort of put it on my face and see how it fits and look at the profile and all the rest of that. So some things can be done electronically or online, but some things need to be done physically, face to face. So though we're talking, this opportunity existed in 2017, 2020 probably would have caused us to refashion how we go about doing some of these similar things. But believe it or not, everything that I just mentioned about using a collaboration or a vertical connection or affinity marketing is still quite useful today post COVID, because it gives you a chance to um, maximize your marketing efforts, increase your foot traffic potential, and even maybe subsidize some of your overhead by incorporating an an ancillary like the makeup artist or the custom jewelry designer or the sunglass designer or manufacturer, however you want to call it. This is a great method of bringing in new eyes, new dollars into your storefront if you hadn't had an opportunity to connect with this population in the past. So that's just one method of the economic gardening for a distressed asset that we could utilize for the Redback Boutique. I'm going to move on to the next one, which is also on the Lower East Side of Detroit. This is Riverfront Building Supply. Now, Mr. Al has owned Riverfront Building Supply for a few decades, a good long minute, and this is a family run business. And it's right down the street from Redback Boutique, right down the street. There isn't an awful lot of synergy between an affinity marketing campaign with Red Bag Boutique and then a Riverfront Building Supply, because the clientele orientation may be a little bit different. There may be some slim pieces centrally where there's some female homeowners or female contractors who need to go to the hardware store, or females who are buying for someone else, but typically that's not the same eco. So we didn't pair them together. we thought we'd do something a little bit different. So let me give you a broader perspective. Mr. Al, who owns the hardware store, is also a contractor. He installs HVAC systems and other home repair services, and has been for quite some time. So he's a dual use entrepreneur, right? He owns a retail store where you can come and procure your furniture, your fixing, whatever you need to fix your home. But he's also one who you can contract with to come in and put in a new HVAC system, to come in and probably do some new shelving or whatever, um, within his confine, whatever was within his actual skill set. What we noticed, what we noticed about his particular footprint, or the clients who were using or patronizing the business, they were particularly those of the construction trade, or those who were very close to the construction trade. They could be handyman, independent handyman, or fix it yourself type of practitioners. They were the primary clients moving in and out of the Riverfront Building Supply Store. They weren't particularly property maintenance or management companies who may have a lot of properties directly in that area. They weren't even the people who were managing the senior homes or the senior complexes down the road on Jefferson. So we needed to look at that, not because they weren't doing good business. He felt comfortable with his sales. He liked what he was doing. He could divide his time between being in a store, which his family pretty much ran the day to day of the store operations, and he was pretty much in the field. So he didn't really feel that there was a disconnect, but there is a way to maximize that space. And one of the ways to do that is a hybrid version of a vertical and horizontal connection into his ecosystem with handyman and home improvement specialists, such as giving them an opportunity to procure some of the equipment or tools or supplies that they may need without needing trade credit. See, if they had trade credit, they'd probably go to big box stores like Menards or um, Home Depot or Lowe's, like that, right? But because Riverfront Building Supply has been around for a minute, he's probably in a position where, he's got trade credit. And if he increased his purchase, he could reduce probably his cost, because it's like you buy in bulk, right? Certain amount of screws, a certain number of hammers, a certain number of strips, tack strips, whatever that may be. You're buying them, and your price is fluctuating based on the number of units you purchase at that time. If you buy more, then your cost is lower. If he could then offer his trade credit allowance to a trusted, vetted population of participants of handymen and home improvement specialists, the do it yourself type of practitioners, he could reduce his own cost, reduce their cost, improve their cash flow situation, because it was a collective purchasing situation. That in by itself is just the biggest win. But another thing is, he also owns directly across the street, not directly in this image, but directly across the street from his retail store, a physical facility that he's building out like a showroom to put on display large items that are probably a little bit more pricey, so people can come and see. He wants to have um, that same presence that you get if you were to go to a Menard, Lowe's, or Home Depot's. He wanted a showplace also for some of his higher end products that he could sell to the marketplace. But what if he was to fashion half of it showplace, half of it workplace or workshop? Take a handyman who's extremely proficient in laying flooring, maybe composite or the tongue and groove, synthetic. I'm sure that's not the term they use. Forgive me, I'm drawing a blank, but not hardwood flooring, or even if it was, gave them a space in his storefront or showplace, having the opportunity to create DIY style engagements, and he's featuring this handyman or this home improvement specialist. And in order for you to participate, you go across the street, you buy all your supplies from Riverside or Riverfront Building Supply, And then in that situation, you got your ticket, you come over here and you sign up for this workshop, and it's a live demonstration. See, that is also a way of combining a vertical and horizontal connection, building more of a clientele, a diversified clientele into the hardware store, but also building in a retained cost savings by really spreading the cost of the things that you procure. It also has a significant opportunity to increase your foot traffic, definitely increasing your marketing, and ultimately increasing your sales, but making your storefront, this particular hardware store, a destination, much like a Lowe's, a Home Depot, Ace Hardware, and any of the rest. Okay. On the northeast side of Detroit, there is a gym, a boxing and fitness center, but a gym. 14659 Gratiot. Um, heavy traffic in the area. The owner is a former heavyweight boxer who wanted to offer a youth boxing and training program to local Detroiters. You know, he made his money, he made his claim to fame as a belted heavyweight participant. He's got the belt to prove it. He wanted to provide that. He thought that was a way to elevate youth out of poverty and out of situations that seemed extremely boxed in based on their environment. So he designed, created, purchased this particular location, built it out, 16 or 14659, and made it a gym. He made this gym. The traffic is extremely heavy, so location strategy not all bad, with the exception of the client orientation not being centrally fit. Though it's near 7 Mile and Gratiot, heavy traffic. The drive clip is about 48 miles an hour down Gratiot in this particular sector of Detroit. But what was amazing is that he was less than 30% activation, less than 30%. And the 30%, or the numbers that he got, still not quite 30%, was because he had a young man who he was mentoring, who had a few friends, and their parents would pay for them to come in for after school training programs. But the gym, the boxing and fitness center, was empty. There were no patrons, there were no memberships, there were no customers. But it had all the equipment that Powerhouse has. It has all the equipment that the Planet Fitness has, but it wasn't generating enough community engagement to actually support bringing on people who be willing to pay. Now, there could be a few different things in that. Right next door or across the street, he's at an intersection. Right across the street is a auto repair shop, and across the street, like many strip malls, lots of retail, completely dense, heavily trafficked and patronized. A couple empty spots right to his right off of 7 Mile, but the walkability rate or the score rate for safety is a little low. Is rather low in the 7 Mile Gratiot area. So people who are probably thinking to have a membership like they have at Powerhouse or Planet Fitness, who you won't find really in distressed communities, he could not poach them because safety was a challenge. They want to go and work out at 6 o'clock in the morning before their 8 o'clock or 8:30 or 9 o'clock day starts, right? Well, you're not going in the dark at 6 o'clock in the morning in an area that you feel like you're not going to be safe. That was problematic. If it's problematic at 6 o'clock in the morning, it's probably also problematic in the evening. And if you have professionals who are looking to stay fit and they need a gym to participate in, they're probably at work during the safer hours to participate. So you're still not able to maximize or capitalize on that particular clientele. So though this was a relatively brand new, um, redesigned fitness center with boxing opportunities, this is a distressed asset. This is a distressed asset. How do we fix it? What can we do to reinvigorate, to bring more opportunity into this location? Well, personal trainers who have a book of business, but not a dedicated physical location. You and I all know that most physical or professional trainers who have a physical regimen are probably at Powerhouse or Lifetime or Planet Fitness, and that's where they're meeting their clients, teaching and training and writing and designing plans for them. But none of them have exclusive use over any of the equipment in the gym. So it's like musical chairs. You may or may not be able to maximize that 1 hour of time and get in everything you want, from your cardio to your actual weight training to whatever else is on your agenda. And that becomes problematic because everybody who walks off the street has the same membership as your personal trainer is trying to, use this equipment. So not necessarily something they can section off, but you could if you were at Motown Fitness Detroit. You could if you had exclusive use during their dormant hours, which could be as early as your clientele would be interested in starting. And now you have total autonomy for those hours that you choose to have a contractual relationship with Motown Fitness. So, in essence, what we're doing is providing your own personalized space that in hour increments. So if you're XYZ personal trainer of Royal Oak and you want to bring your clientele 15 minutes down the way over into the Gratiot area, you have an exclusive use opportunity of the gym, and you can, you know, create the hours that you like to have that engagement. And I would, you could even make it every standing Monday or Monday through Friday. Here are my locked in hours. Then the gym automatically feels like it's yours. It becomes your own physical destination, your own physical space. And that also provides Motown opportunity to grow its footprint. They get to offset some of their overhead by having this subsidized or supplemented rental expense through contractual relationships with personal trainers. But then they may also be able to build a clientele once they start to see more movement in what is right now a dormant and underutilized asset. Motown Fitness presents a really good position for the first client is the personal trainer who has a book of business, who has a dedicated clientele with no physical, true physical location. So now they can have that here at Motown Fitness. Secondly, you can see the opportunity to then um, broadcast, promote through websites, through social media, and then if people are starting to see more movement and see more opportunities, then they may start to feel like it's a safer environment, and then you'll start to see more people have opportunity to come in. Maybe they'll come in on their lunch hour. Maybe they'll come in and because they have flex schedules and it's not just an empty gym and they're afraid for their safety when they know that it truly is utilized. So economic gardening has a multitude of tenants that could be pulled in for a distressed asset to help you implement things that are useful for where and how you participate. That's one version or a second version of economic gardening for a distressed asset. There was an opportunity some time ago for us to try to incorporate some of the key components of economic gardening for a non-retail environment. This is a cognitive therapy and adult daycare center, not retail. This is not a walk off the street grab membership type of thing. This is not a retail business. This operates a little bit different. The owner prior to this location, had three active engaged facilities, one in Warren, one in Southfield, one in Dearborn. All three of them she wanted in different counties, right? Wayne County, Oakland County, Macomb County. And she felt that her resources were stretched because she had a fleet of vehicles servicing each of these locations. She had to have enough ADC staff, the adult daycare staff, for meal planning and placements. And then she had to have activity directors at each location. And she felt that she was doing great business, super great business, but it would make more sense if she could have a central location where everybody could just come and participate and have um, everything under the roof. She could reduce her overhead cost, definitely reduce her labor cost. At that time, I think she was servicing about 190 clients collectively between the three locations. She had an epiphany. I'm going to go to Sterling Heights. Uh, it's easily located right off the freeway, really not that much, but she thought so. And so she's procured this 16,244 square foot facility that has 12 active suites, but really probably more like 15 or 16, but 12 that would be good for individualized sessions. And then she had six conference rooms, and the facility itself had five different entrances. And because of the clientele that she actually services, cognitive therapy, dementia, things of that sort, um, you probably don't want five entries because at that point, that means you also have to monitor the entries to be sure that no one walks out of the facility. That could become a safety challenge or a hold of some sort. Long story short, she consolidated three locations into one. And in doing that, the egress, the retention was really rather small. She only maintained 90 active guests after making that move. So she cannibalized her operation by moving everything into one central location. But with a 16,244 square foot facility, of which you are now responsible for all of the expenses, where she wasn't in any of the other expenses, the water bill, the light bill, heating and cooling, security, everything. Now you're responsible for all these things in this location, in this particular facility. That just increased her expenses with only 90 active guests. Let's just say she needed 100% activation of her prior um, population or participant engagement. She needed every bit of 190 to 200 of them to actually cover the operation, maintenance, cash flow for this facility. She needed all of them. And furthermore, she was somewhere like 8,000 square feet larger than all three of the other facilities combined. She fell in love with the facility. And by the way, it is gorgeous. It's a medical complex intended to house like maybe 15 different practitioners, all in the medical fields. It's like its own self contained um, destination for medical service providers. So, in theory, it made a lot of sense. She thought it was great, but the facility was just too large for the population and the participant engagement. So, we decided to step back a minute and look for what wraparound services could be offered as billable services to her clientele, things that were not currently offered under the Prestige Behavioral Therapies umbrella. Well, mobile dentistry was not a service that was provided, podiatry was not a service provided, physical therapy was not a service provided. We brought in musical therapists. We brought in all the people who could then perhaps offer um, ongoing engagements. We created an opportunity where they would become tenants in this environment, right? So those 12 suites, all 12 weren't occupied. We had 9 available suites that we could definitely um, sublet to a mental, um, another doctor, a podiatrist, a physical therapist, anybody who wanted or needed to have a destination and to have 90 active to 100 to maybe 150 as our pipeline start to grow, direct plug in clientele. You walk out the door and you look at who's available, You can assess their medical insurance, and you can say, hey, let's get them on our calendar for their wellness check-ins and all the rest of it. It proved to be an extremely useful method of stopping the bleeding. The wraparound service engagement allowed her to also market to the population, because now she had to rebuild, right? She had to rebuild the clientele. This allowed her an opportunity to market in broad strokes to that population. Not only do we have cognitive therapists here, you can sit down and speak to your own clinician. Not only do we offer adult daycare related services, but we also have some supplemental services: physical therapy, podiatry, medical, dental care, and some other things. Because she was able to do that, she could also um, engage and enliven her marketing opportunities by now not just saying it's a destination where people see a therapist and they have some lunch and some activities, but they have a more robust medical complex, medical community. So the outcome there is to increase her facility, which would help to reduce, when I say facility, I mean facility use, by having paid tenants who would offset some of that really, really, really high um, monthly obligation. And the tenants could then become feeders into her cognitive therapy program, which allowed her to just, create a more vertical client engagement. She could do affinity marketing. She could do joint events with any of these practitioners, and it began to stabilize. I need to say this, that we did this about August of 2019. And as all of us know, by March of 2020, we were shuttered. And you also know that the most vulnerable population are the seniors, or at the time were the seniors. And so then there were no people coming to this particular location. So all of those great efforts still could not reinvigorate or stabilize a distressed asset when there are shelter in place rules. There's nothing that I could pull out of my toolkit to support that. But now that she's coming out of, or they're coming out of the COVID, this is sort of post COVID, we sort of think in our, at least in our brain, I don't know if that's really true in the world, but the economy is opening up again. Every tenant that we, every process that we put in place is a tenant of execution today. She can go back, reinvigorate, um, massage all of those opportunities with the different therapists and do a lot of plug and play, and then hopefully grow that pipeline if she was able to hold on to this facility. And if not, then the same process will work if she were to open in other smaller um, operations as well. This is one of my favorite distressed asset opportunities. This is an organization not in Detroit but in Flint. It was the Fresh Fish Cafe. And I alluded earlier in the presentation that not all businesses have to be distressed asset. You could be a distressed asset. You could be the business owner who's just like, I've done my time. My offspring don't want to jump into this business and take it over. Um, they reaped all the benefits, but they're leaving me holding um, the reins a little bit longer than I anticipate. I thought I'd be able to go off and do some golfing or fishing or whatever. So we met with a young man who owned this storefront, the Fresh Fish Cafe. Population super heavy, very consistent, anchored by a Little Caesars, couple churches and school systems, destination all the way around. The location had some challenges because the owner didn't want to open up every day. He really felt like it was a compromise to be in store 7 days a week when he really would prefer golfing and fishing, or to be anywhere other than the store every day. The city of Flint was extremely interested in finding a means to help support distressed assets, because his option was to shut it down, close it out, and just retire. Cities don't want to see more underutilized assets. They don't want to see people shut down a business on their own, just because the way they see it would be just because versus having a means to help stabilize their use. So we sublet. We created a sublet agreement. Cisco's Catering, as featured here in this illustration, participated in our very first small business training program that was launched in the city of Flint. And we had 12 participants, 9 of which were food entrepreneurs. And those who practiced their process and had proof of concept, we decided that we would sublet a single day out of the week for a series of months for them in the Fresh Fish Cafe. So what does that look like? Cisco's Catering was the destination at Fresh Fish Cafe on Wednesdays and on Sundays. They had 2 days out of the week. Cisco's Catering had Wednesday and they had Sunday. And what does that allow them to do? They can post their menu in advance for everybody to know. Don't forget, here's our menu, here's what we're serving. They can not only use social media to draw traffic, you see all that real estate, all that glass real estate, they can post right on that glass, here's our menu for Wednesday, here's our menu for Sunday. And it gave them an opportunity to do two things because they were a catering company, which meant they collect 50% of the, you know, clients' requests on the front end. They go in, they buy whatever they have, they prep, they make it, and when they deliver the food, they collect their other half. That does not teach you retail engagement. That does not teach you how to plan staffing when you're going to be open for an 11-hour day. That did not teach them what they needed for the tenets of retail management or inventory controls or having an opportunity to understand really plated meals and unitized selection. It was a great teaching method for the participants who were Cisco's Catering, Chauncey Nguyen, who had the Pit Stop, Talisha Campbell, who had Taste of Culture, and Antonio's, I can't think of his burger spot, but either way, each of those participants pretty much ate up most of the week, allowing the owner to only need to operate 2 days out of the week. 2 days, two. And he didn't have to open then if he didn't want to, but he could. But here's what we learned as an added benefit. All of them had French fries as part of their offering. Nearly all of them had salads as part of their offering. You know, they all had supplies like bags and tape register, the cash register tape and things like that. They were able to do bulk purchase, split the bill 5 ways, right? Increase their purchase potential, split the bill by 5 ways, including a benefit for the owner because he was the one who had the existing trade credit. Great way to actually introduce economic gardening for what could be potentially a distressed asset, and only distressed because the owner didn't want to operate. But the owner had an opportunity to test that out and for 4 months feel like he might want to go on. So even though we only operated that for 2 months in our training program, he continued on with that for a little bit until he decided he was ready to exit the field altogether. You know, he just decided that, yeah, you know, I've gotten myself in a situation where I can just become a landlord versus a fish fry spot. I'm going to be a landlord and sublet the space out and let it do what it does. In today's terms, we may see that as a version of a pop-up, but it's really a version of a pop-up of an economic gardening tool. All the tenants start to look alike after a little bit, but it's really about how you utilize it. To this day, he's been able to move on, so the practice or the building and off to greener pastures. I understand he's golfing and fishing whenever he feels like it. For those of you in the audience who may be a facility owner versus a participant, the engagement strategy is very different. You have to implement a strategy based on your positioning and then how you be able to actually activate um, those who you are trying to attract. As the facility owner, you have to identify, like I mentioned for Red Bag Boutique, really strong entrepreneur training programs like Prosper Us Detroit, like anything happening at Tech Town that's SWAT City, or um, I think they have a boot camp. They have a retail boot camp. Any of the things like that that are offered at um, Build Institute, When you can find the cream that rises to the top, who has demonstrated proof of concept, now is a great opportunity for you to partner with those entrepreneurial training programs by subletting or offering whatever you believe is necessary. If it's a few hours, if it's not a day, if it's not, collective purchasing power, whatever you believe is necessary. Be clear about what it is you want to obtain, whatever your goals are. Be clear about those. You should not have too many gray areas around what that engagement strategy looks like. Make sure you put a date and time of when it executes and when it completes. Give yourself a back out door in the event that things don't go right. They're not bringing enough foot traffic. You haven't seen increased joint marketing. Have a method of determining fit and compliance as a facility owner. If you're the distressed asset, your challenges and your demands are different than someone who's practicing their process. You need to be in a position where you're in control of what happens in your day to day. And if you are underutilized asset and not totally distressed, you don't want your brand to be diminished. You need to put safeguards in place to actually support that. Now, as the participant without an actual brick and mortar facility, as the person who's building your business and you've got a solid following, as the person who needs a place, you're willing to pay a couple dollars in small increments just to have an opportunity to practice your process, get in front of your clientele, and you believe that you can also help this other individual, then yeah, you don't want to go to a place that you're going to be a direct competitor, right? You want to be able to enhance or complement their offering. You want to be able to show that you offer value in this relationship. Be clear about what you expect in this engagement. Do your research about the local market and whether or not you believe you can actually do something that can sort of convert locals, like I mentioned in Riverfront Building Supply, right? Pulling traffic into the spot because we got these DIY like workshops and people are always doing home improvement projects. If you own a home, you find that you're always trying to do something to improve your space. Um, if you do your research on the front end and you find out that it may be difficult for you to convert the locals or to retain and maintain an active clientele, and the people that you currently service are Northwest Detroit, and the only location you're looking at for a possible sublet is on the Lower East Side, that's a whole new market and it may not fit. So that may not be a really good spot for you to start. Look for something different. Use the opportunity to identify operational challenges as well. Am I solid on my pricing? Am I good on my customer service? What is my CRM really like? Am I able to do the necessary customer relationship follow up process? Am I in a position to make sure that my inventory controls are really good? You need to use that real time in order to give you some of what you could get through a pop up, but having a real destination. Remember, you don't want just an hour or two. You really are trying to get your spot to be a destination so people can plan it in their activities, not for 1 or 2 hours, because if I'm otherwise engaged, you're not even on my radar. But if I know you're going to be there every Monday between the hours of 9 a.m. and 7 p.m., then I can coordinate what I need to coordinate and figure out a way to actually engage you. There are some other opportunities beyond just the facility owner and the participant because the ecosystem requires other stakeholders. And I'm going to review them in just a minute. In my honest opinion, you need to have some method of understanding, and this is from the facility owner's viewpoint, not from the person who's the um, technician trying to practice their wares or the participant. Create a very robust screening mechanism. Be clear about what it is um, you want to happen in your facility. Have your do's and your don'ts, security codes, parking enhancements, what the space utilization is going to look like. Have those mechanisms in place. Be absolutely clear about what type of branding or marketing you want as um, the highlight for your asset as a destination. Attempt to plan and enforce a realistic timeline. Short windows. Do everything in spurts, small windows, so you can measure the efficiency and effectiveness and determine whether or not the solution is something that can have a longer life cycle. And this method will give you a short-term solution that will attempt to forecast your future use and expansion and whether or not this is something you have um, a real sense of interest in. Now, we need other supports. We need the facility to practice, and we need the practitioners who need to practice. But we need other ecosystem participants to support us as well. So I have a few options for proposed support, one through municipalities or local governments, as well as entrepreneurship ecosystem stakeholders. I would I would like to see municipalities relax permitting to support startups, right? If the building already has a certificate of occupancy, if its insurance is already in place, meaning the commercial kitchen is already licensed, the participant has all the serve safe criteria, then let's say the permitting and licensing and regulatory compliance is in place. And if anything, maybe you can offer your uh, and resident compliance people an opportunity to become advisors rather than enforcers to this ecosystem as we attempt to reinvigorate distressed communities and assets. Don't we want to see every corner, every street block or retail block, commercial block activated? A lot of it has to do with the red tape that they can't get around. We're not talking about a building that's not structurally sound. We're not talking about a building that has regulated compliance on what type of operation can persist in this particular space because of health requirements. But where retail on retail is attainable, we need there to be some lax method of use. When you have financial resources that are available, we need them to be allocated as a set aside for technical assistance for these distressed assets, much to bridge the gap, like your Motor City Match, Motor City Restore, all those things, sort of, but not completely. Um, think of it like a 2.0, a more concentrated, direct implementation versus a hands off approach. No, we want targeted dollars to do a particular thing, not just facade improvements, but giving them access to consultants and technicians who are really at the top of their game around merchandise management, around inventory control, supply chain solutions, whatever that particular entrepreneur business owner may need. Let's make sure that we provide them with the right talents and skill sets and a technical assistance pool to support that. And then entrepreneurship ecosystem stakeholders are anything or anyone like colleges and universities. Use your capstone students to actually go to strictly sportswear. Help them with mapping, marketing, financial systems, and business management. Send them directly to Cuts Lounge. Send them directly to Norma G's. Send them directly where your resources, they're learning real time, cutting edge, new methods. Have your colleges and universities or other ecosystem participants activate through capstone training as part of their real world evidence based training. They get to take a real live business and implement these particular infrastructures or designs and infrastructure. Small business support agencies can also offer really good fit candidates, right? Like a Prosperous Detroit would know which of the businesses are probably primed to participate. They also have opportunity to share in this. And then there should be some type of relationship between identifying the anchor and making sure we don't pilfer or diminish in any capacity when we anchor, when we connect anchors and ideators collectively. Um, this distressed process did work as a real quick illustration. What you're seeing right now is a underutilized strip mall in the city of Flint called Hallwood Plaza. 28 potential stores, but only two of them were activated. The city of Flint met with the owners of this Hallwood and decided that they would allow best practices and a few others to run um, really concentrated advanced boot camp pop-ups that were operating like sublet opportunities in Hallwood Plaza. We learned a good many things about how to actually reinvigorate community, but we also learned that it was only a short-term solution. It was really a good way to process and benchmark strategies that could be implemented, but some of the things that we learned using collegiate students, they have seasons of schooling, right? January through May, and then they have an off season. They don't engage again until September. Well, when we're talking about offering technical assistance by a student who's about to get their BA in accounting, or they're about to become a CPA, but you don't have direct access to them in the off seasons, you leave this entrepreneur without structural implements that are executable beyond that bridge. So that becomes a problem. I need to define what I consider a distressed physical asset, though I gave it to you in a lot of analogy. My definition of a distressed physical asset, it has to be a structurally sound physical facility where foot traffic is drastically diminished, but where anchored businesses or community could possibly relocate, or where the market has shifted, you can pull some other processes in place to actually um, stabilize, like what Littleton did, or Littleton, Colorado. So this concludes my distressed assets presentation, or how to improve a distressed asset with tenets of economic gardening. Again, my name is Laura Sigmund. I'm the principal here at Best Practices, and this is my team of people, Caleb, Dolores, and Victoria. We want to say a hearty thank you to TechTown Detroit, specifically to Mr. Lawrence Jackson, who is the Director of Entrepreneurship Education. Thank you so much. This is such a timely opportunity post-COVID to provide resources to those who are coming out of that shuttered space and trying to probably reinvigorate their own spot. We thank you again for allowing us the opportunity to present this. Thank you. Have a good day.